Just to give a briefing on the layout of my presentation, I will just give an introduction to Sri Lankan context, and then move into more kind of women and development situation, and of course then to the impact on alcohol on women, and then impact of alcohol on children. And I will just briefly talk about the current tendencies with regard to alcohol in Sri Lanka. So this is the kind of layout of my presentation. Of course, when I'm talking about development for the purpose of today's discussion, I would like to stick to this definition that development basically means the improvement in the quality of life of individuals, and that when it comes to Sri Lanka, there had been a lot of efforts as a nation since independence to improve the quality of life of people, including that of women. There had been a lot of efforts taken, but sometimes there could be other things running parallelly, which kind of reduces or kind of have an impact on those efforts. So this is Sri Lanka. Most of you must have seen it in the map. It's in the Indian Ocean, small island with very small 25 districts. And of course you must have heard about the civil war going on in the northern part of the country, which is on the top. The Jaffna, Kilnochi, Mullaitivu, Vavuniya, Mana, and maybe in some parts of parts from east, Trincomalee, Batticaloa, those range. So as an organization, development organization, our work, we have been working throughout the country. We had different projects going on at different times in different districts. And at certain times we had to withdraw from certain districts and emphasize more on other districts, as it takes. So the population is just 21 million, and the square kilometer range is 62,000. And you will see the ethnic distribution, majority being the Sinhalese, and we have the Indian Tamil and the Sri Lankan Tamils, Muslims, and of course Burgher and other ethnic groups distributed in different areas of the country. And of course again the religious distribution, you will see we are a multi-ethnic and multi-religious society, majority being the Buddhist, and of course Hindus, Christians and Islam and other religions as well. Move forward to life expectancy of males and females. You will see a vast difference, that it is high for females, low for males, and of course one reason is, a major reason is alcohol. I mean, if you just forget about the natural deaths that is taking place, and the deaths that had been taken place due to civil war, the other major reason is alcohol and of course tobacco. So women are gaining in certain areas. Of course you will see they have not gained as much as males in other areas. When it comes to literacy, of course it is greater for women comparatively, but it is higher for males. And education, there had been a lot of efforts taken by the government, policy developments to improve the quality of education for women. And of course, education is free in Sri Lanka, so that had helped a lot to this literacy rate. And this is just a little bit of information about the country. And moving forward to women in Sri Lanka, the situation. Of course, if you looked into any kind of data from Sri Lanka, you will see that the socio-economic indicators for women, it shows that the quality of life of women is much better, of course, compared to the other countries in the region. But still, there are, in spite of all these efforts, as I told you earlier, there are limitations in the approaches that had been used to reach women, the barriers which are inbuilt within the society due to the social structure. It again has a lot of impact on the development of women. And this presentation will, of course, focus on issues, some direct, some indirect, related to alcohol use, and its, of course, after misbehavior patterns on women. Why I am telling this is, when I go forward in my presentation, you will see that the impacts are not that good. But I have to tell you that is when I talk in relation to the alcohol consumption of the spouse mostly. But other than that, there are other development efforts, policy changes, structural changes happening, infrastructure development, all those things are happening, and women are, there are different types of levels of development for women, some with regard to education, employment, and on, independence, on economic independence. There are different changes happening. But I have to tell again that there is a percentage of women who are really whose development is really deprived of the consumption of alcohol of males. You will see why I am telling that. And of course, I will focus on the social development, economic development, and psychological development with regard to women. And when it comes to social, economic, and psychological development, it is, at least, this is not the only indicators I would say, but at least we can look into major selected indicators that we can measure development for women. Level of knowledge and skills, opening of opportunities, access to resources and services, freedom of mobility, equality in treatment, safety from abuse and violence, which has direct impact on the quality of life of women, especially in Sri Lanka, in our context. So, going into a kind of briefing on alcohol status of Sri Lanka, the research and data are very rare, I would say, and the whatever is kind of available will not give a kind of a national figure. As you know, research is very costly. National-wide research is very costly, and sensitive data. People are very sensitive to these questions. Whether you are taking alcohol, how much are you taking, how much of your income is gone for alcohol. You will not get proper answers because it's if you ask women, it's quite sensitive for them. They will not want to reveal. Because it gives different problems for them after revealing those information. And if you ask men, they don't want to declare due to different reasons. So there are differences in the data that you will see in different reports. And in the global health report, the last one in 2004, it says 83% I think had abstained from alcohol, but representing the situation of Sri Lanka, I would not agree with that. So those are the differences, because you see this is from the 2010 spot. I have missed some words there. I don't know what happened to the words. It's from the spot survey of ADDIC Sri Lanka, the Alcohol, Drug and Development Institution Center, which is directly working with the IOGT movement here. According to their spot survey, annually they are doing their spot surveys. According to that, only 55% had abstained for the last 12 months. And 45% were users, kind of, they were kind of regular users. At least it is more than 5 times per month, up to, could be 30 times everyday use. And out of that, 5% are heavy drinkers who would, kind of drink throughout the day maybe, and have a high kind of, amount per day. Amount is very high. The kind of age distribution out of this 45, age 15 to 24, it's 36%. Age 25 to 39, it's little bit more than 50%. And more than 40, it's 49% out of this 45%. Of course, the situation in Sri Lanka and maybe in the most other Asian countries, it's different from the Western countries, because the consumption level for women is very low. In Sri Lanka, it is less than 1%. But if you talk about the impact, they are in the forefront. They are not the consumers, and very little women take alcohol, and that is for different reasons, not as a habit. I will talk about it later. But more than 90% of women, this is from the families where at least one male member consumes alcohol regularly, I'm talking, are affected directly. More than 90%. And of course, we should not forget that there is a percentage of women who had become widows due to the alcohol use of husbands, and a percentage of children who has lost fathers before, in their middle ages or very young ages. Of course, the exact data is not available to give. And we are a kind of, still, I can say that we are a patriarchal society. We are living in a patriarchal kind of society in Sri Lanka. And among other factors that link to masculinity, alcohol is one of the major factors. Because, alcohol consumption itself is perceived as a masculine feature. You are not a man if you don't have a glass of alcohol. You can prove your masculinity if you are, man enough to take a glass of alcohol. And if somebody is, refused, then people, even if they don't say to the face, they will anyhow talk about him as, he's a kind of a womanish kind of a guy because he refused to take alcohol. So that kind of a situation is there, and these are very important when it comes to, I saw that Doug mentioned that every year there is this percentage of youth who are kind of coming into the age where alcohol is permitted, legally permitted. In Sri Lanka, it is 21 years. So, it doesn't mean that below 21 years are not taking alcohol, but, the illegal age is 21 years. So, these kind of, norms have some impact on these newcomers. They want to prove themselves. Attaining age kind of, showing their masculinity. So, that alcohol plays a major role within the peer groups. So that is why I want to mention that here. And of course, I don't need to tell, the masculine thinking generates a powerlessness and a dependent environment within women. And of course, it allows or permits the enforcement of power and control over women, especially kind of as a misbehavior of alcohol, because mostly it's a kind of a alcohol is used to control women. You can control, you can misbehave, and then in our context, you will see, I'll talk about it, that it is accepted. And of course, this is a kind of a stumbling block against the development of women, especially within the marriage and the family. Gender norm, we are still fighting with the gender norms as well. And it is adding more into this. Additionally, these gender norms, the socializing practices, the structural factors that policies excuses men's abusive practice against women, this further increase the situation actually. And when I'm talking about women whose development is affected due to alcohol, I'm talking about at least of three categories of women. Women who are at the moment live with the husband who takes alcohol, and women who have lost their husband due to alcohol use, and women who do not have close family who takes alcohol but still faces difficulties of other men in the society who has taken alcohol. It kinds of limits your mobility. It's very difficult to walk on the road after 6 o'clock, or it's worse worse even late in the night. So you can be anytime harassed, and nobody would come to your help if it is from a drunken man. It is, people would say, we don't want to get into trouble, and that is the behavior of drunken men. So it's no use kind of intervening. So you are kind of helpless there. So they will not, what they can at least do is they will not go out if they are concerned about their safety, and not empowered enough to fight your own, have your own fight. There are a percentage of women who can do that, but not the majority. And these abusive practices which are permissive under the influence of alcohol is the major kind of link that affects the development of women, since it is not their direct consumption. So these abusive practices which are very permissive, for example, the verbal abuse, you can, under the influence of alcohol, you can say any dirty word and nobody would care about it, because he is drunk, he doesn't know what he is saying. And you can do the shouting, insulting, harming the dignity of a person, but still nobody would care. The majority, I'm talking again. The physical abuse, again permissive if you are under the influence of alcohol. Use of physical violence, hitting, pushing, slapping, harsh dragging, kicking. These are some of the things that is actually taking place within families. Mostly this harsh dragging is very common for many wives. If she kind of responds in a different manner, not accepting the behavior. So you will say, when I go into the case studies, that most of them, they were dragged out of the house and they stay outside the house throughout the night. So those are some of the common things happening within families where alcohol consumption is a kind of a regular pattern. And emotional abuse, you can ignore the family, you can abandon the family, not provide the needs of the family, and you can see kind of seal the social network for the family members, and you can neglect and harm children. And that is kind of, accepted because the person is under the influence of alcohol. I mean, if a person is not under the influence of alcohol, a person who is not consuming alcohol, if such person doing all these things, that would not be tolerated. People will, blame him and, try to do some kind of intervention. And even if I am walking on the road and if a normal man who is not under the kind of intoxication comes and kind of hit me, people will come and support me. But it is different for a drunken man because it is permissive. He doesn't know what he was doing. And of course, the serious issue is the sexual abuse. Forced sex, unwanted or unaccepted sexual demands, and maybe sexual acts, and demanding sex in front of children. Those are some of the things that you can't do as a normal person, So you take the cover of alcohol when you want to act in a different manner. That the socialization process itself, there is a thing going on that, gives that learning, thinking, and harming again the attitudes of children. So those are some of the aspects that we are looking at when we do our interventions. And if I'm just to give a briefing on how permissive environment creates injustice. This alcohol and other drug users deliberately make the alcohol use as an excuse to avoid or evade family and other responsibilities. It's again, as I told you, it's a cover that, in these cases, I must say that we can't put the total blame on the men. The socialization process into a manhood has its own weaknesses. Where men has to take the burden of, as the breadwinner. Sometimes this is my interpretation. Sometimes it is too much for men. So there are support needed if you have your interventions with men. But maybe I will not talk much about the interventions with men today, because my focus is on women and development. But you need to understand these in those contexts, and you are allowed to break the accepted norms. You are even allowed to go half dressed, if you are drunk, and people would just say look out other way and move, not kind of giving you a comment because he's a drunken man, and of course this violent behavior that is the major issue. And as I told you earlier, allowed to take the cover of alcohol in order to gain special privileges from family members and maybe society at large. Use it as an alibi. It's not me, it's alcohol, kind of thing. Victims, and from the side, if I am to talk about from the side of the victims, they too excuse. Not only the person who consumes, but the victim too excuse these behaviors in the belief that they were done unintentionally under the influence of alcohol. Most women, more than 90% of the women who undergo this harsh treatment, they would say, he's a good man when he's not drunk. He behaves in this manner when he's, during the night only. In the morning, he's I don't want to leave him, or I don't want to blame him. He's a nice man. Kind of manipulation. Yes. And it's the social learning as well, and because we have the kind of this social learning pattern that kind of emphasize those behaviors are unintentional. It's not the person. Say, instead of blaming the individual for his behavior or her behavior, the blame can be easily put on alcohol, right? You can do very unusual dance in a wedding if you are drunk, and people would just laugh and ignore. And if you are not under the kind of you have not consumed alcohol, people would say he's an insane man, and that is not be tolerated. He will be dragged out of the festival and not accepted. But if you are a drunken man, people would just enjoy and just ignore. He can do he will come and touch the faces of other women, not his wife, other women. He's allowed to do that, and the women would also he is drunk, give the permission, right? If a normal man who is not taken alcohol comes and touches your woman, the husband also will not tolerate. But if it is a drunken man who is coming and touches your wife, he will also laugh and ignore. So those are common within these festival weddings and ceremonies. It gives you the permission to behave any way you want. And he can just say, I had little too much. He can excuse himself, be the good man again. I had little too much. I can't remember a thing. Did I touch you last night? He can ask, right? Then he can pretend that he can't remember. And I was under the influence. I didn't know it was. Did I do that? That kind of cover up can be taken. And going into the impact on the economic development of women, these are mostly the results of the consumption of alcohol of the spouse. Since women are not spending any family income towards alcohol consumption, it is mostly the impact of the husband's alcohol consumption. It kind of overburdens women of family responsibilities, because men can be easily, they can easily forget about the responsibilities and take the cover of alcohol. And economic hardships due to the dependency, lack of savings, because women are mostly, when I say women, it's not the whole total women I'm talking here. There are independent women who earn money and who are in professional kind of levels. But when I talk about women coming from rural, kind of lower middle scale, poor families, they are very much dependent on the income that is brought by the husband. They have to totally, for the education of the children, for the family nutrition, for everything, they have to depend on that. So this, of course, the interventions are going on to empower women economically, but still they have issues. And they themselves are unable to engage in economic activity due to lack of support for childcare, because they have the total responsibility for childcare. They can't leave the children and go and earn their own money. There's nobody to look after children. And of course, if women are engaged in economic activity, it again becomes a barrier to her own, engagement in the economic activity. If you are kind of emotionally or physically abused, and then it doesn't, make you productive, it kind of reduces your productivity and has an impact on your employment. And of course, economic decision making, you can have your own money, but you can't kind of have the control of the money. The control is with somebody else, of course with the spouse. Your own money that you have earned from self-employment or whatever. And there are kind of, percentage of women who are in the professional levels, but still affected, who undergo violence, and it can, of course, limit their professional development for those women because of the absenteeism from work. Yeah. So it leads to poverty of women. Alcohol is used by men as a means of escaping from the reality of life, economic hardships, because it's a kind of a self-handicapping for them. They can easily kind of, be in a self-handicapping situation and kind of ignore the family responsibility. And being in the self-handicapping situation, still they can maintain the power and masculinity because they are the head of the family, and men are conceptually the main breadwinners. So conceptually, although they don't bring any money, so they can still maintain their masculinity, where again deprive women of development, engaging in economic activity and be independent. So therefore women are not expected to go out and earn living for the family, even they don't have the money. And of course again the skills and the other required requirements needed for women to earn an income for the family is not met in most cases, because women have not been engaged earlier and they have not gained any skills to engage in any economic activity. So when the need comes, they don't know what to do, what they can do to earn something. They can be easily kind of, manipulated by different people. So those are again leading to women and their poverty. So lack of access to resources and services, lack of access to information and markets, lack of decision-making power, mobility, and skills and the abilities for involvement in economic earning activity. Those are again major concerns when it comes to women and poverty. Impact on the social development. Or maybe before I go into the impact of the social development, may I ask whether you need any clarification with regard to what I have been talking on this situation of women and their economic ability and poverty? Clear? Yeah. Okay. Of course, it has these, you need to, again, I'm kind of, reinforcing these things. You have to understand these things in relation to the kind of this permissive behavior and, the consumption of alcohol by spouse. On that context only, these impacts are relevant for women. There are limitations to education, skill development. Maybe for as a child, maybe as a adolescent, or even after that, this can limit because of the control that men have on women. They are not able to independently engage in these kind of skill development activities. And we have our own experiences when we have the kind of workshops for women. Some women, they just don't tell their husbands. Without telling, they come, and they and sometimes even if they want, they can't come because nobody is there to look after children. So there are different issues that kind of have an impact. And less access to information and communication. To give an example, you can have your own production. Say if you are doing your own kind of self-employment, and you will not know where the markets are, what is the developments in the market, the current prices. Those don't have the kind of access to those information, because they have this mobility issue, and because of that, engaging in an economic activity itself is not sometimes productive, because they are not kind of updated with the current information and communication. So these have kind of chain effect for different aspects of women development. And of course it limits social relationship and interaction. Most of the women who is kind of affected by the consumption of alcohol consumption of the spouse, they are kind of they don't want to go and have the social interactions, because again they will be harassed, because men would always ask, why did you go and talk to them? Did you go and told them that I hit you last night? So suspicion, lack of trust, those things can again come back to you. Those reactions, those responses. So they are very fear of those things. So they don't want to interact and kind of come and openly talk about it. They kind of stay within their own houses, and they are quite unhappy. They are very kind of not even concerned about their own cleanliness. Not feel like doing it, they would say. I didn't feel like removing my or changing my dress, because what's the use? Nobody would care. So those low kind of mentality is there, and they don't want to go out and have the interactions. That also have a relationship. Yes. And this is another aspect. And in Sri Lanka, the political participation, and if you take the representation in the parliament of women, it's only less than 5%, so 4 point something, less than 5%. And in the local government system, it is around 33%. They have representation. And if you take this 5%, those women are also, they are coming from they are not kind of educated or empowered themselves to go into politics. They are kind of wives of the husband who had been in the politics and shot dead, and daughters of politicians who are no more. So that is the kind of influence when it comes to politics in Sri Lanka for women, because the grassroots empowerment for leadership is not there. It's not there, but it's very difficult for women to kind of come into that. And how alcohol plays a role is very important. The political system is very much influenced by alcohol, because it's manly thing. You can't kind of if you are running for election, there are so many things that you need to do. Introduce yourself, go canvassing, have the meetings, But women are unable to do these things because they are very much, linked to alcohol. You have to serve alcohol to get the support of the men. And since women are not the consumers, and it will, if they kind of serve, it will give a bad image that nobody would give votes. Because for women, it is a bad thing to take alcohol. That is accepted. If a woman who is taking alcohol is not kind of valued or accepted, and she's looked down upon. So if she's to come to politics, she can't just serve alcohol and have the good image. We actually have good examples where the last female president in Sri Lanka, she was as the gossips goes, she was said to have done all that to be in the power. Of course, she came to politics because her father was in the politics, who was shot dead, and her husband was in the politics, who were again shot dead. But still, she was kind of trying to maintain her kind of, relationships and, power, because it's basically a kind of, it's a kind of men's territory, politics. So as the gossips went, she used to take alcohol and serve alcohol, and ultimately she lost the image, and she couldn't sustain her presidency. In the next election, she lost. So it's really difficult for a woman to either do it or not do it, pressed from both sides. Of course, most of the people knew that those were not just rumors, because there were evidence that she had to do it, and these paparazzis are there. They will have the pictures in the papers, and of course her image was not as good it had been earlier. So those things matter when you talk about political development of women. So it is very much related to alcohol, and the campaigns, events spend a lot on alcohol during election time. Our organizations, we run special campaigns on kind of alcohol issue, like that you should not vote people who serve alcohol. That kind of campaigns we run during the election time, because it is very much related to alcohol. And women, therefore, the participation, women has to think twice whether I want to go into this or I want to just stay behind. Those are affecting her decisions. And of course, another major thing, practice of violence. This after behavior, the misbehavior, after consuming alcohol, again, which is running during the political campaigning time. So much of violence is taking place. And that is also under the influence of alcohol. So women are very, they find it very difficult to sustain within these settings. This is another major issue, alcohol and gender-based violence. As the data says, the domestic violence is 60%. Practically, my experience is it is more than that, because more women undergo at least one type of domestic violence. May it be verbal, emotional, sexual. So it is more than that. Because, mostly when women reveal or somebody observes, it is mostly physical violence, not any other type of violence. They would not even consider them as violence, because most of these things are allowed within the marriage. You can, verbally abuse your wife, and even the wife would say, it's my man who had done it, not anyone else. So what does it matter to you? So interventions are very difficult, even with women, because they themselves do not want to accept. So this 60% is actually more than that. And of course, in studies of wife abuse and rape, the batterer or the rapist was blamed less when he was depicted as drunken than when he was depicted as sober. I have the very recent example. I was even telling this yesterday. 2 months back, maybe not even 2 months back, a 10-year girl was raped inside her own school in her classroom by 5 to 6 men. And, all of them were just talking about that these men were under the influence of alcohol. That was the main, topic. Not that it is, what happened to that girl's life and her future. All these things were not in the discussions. And they were about to be bailed out. I will come into those aspects as well, where in different systems this is being excused. Legal system, medical system, court system, when things have happened under the influence of alcohol, that is the attitude of people. So all the women's organizations in the area had to have a picket in front of the court asking not to bail them out. So you have to push these things. It doesn't automatically happen within the system. So that was the major issue. And I don't think anybody cared what happened to the girl. It was just, they didn't know, unintentionally. And they themselves were telling that. We didn't know that we were drunk. But what we trying to discuss within our own setting, if you don't know what they are doing when you are drunk, then you are just lying down there without, you are just not in your senses. If you know what you are doing, right, then you go and find your own house. You know that you are hitting your wife, not the neighbor's wife. Then it is not unintentional, because you know what you are doing, right? If you don't know what you are doing, you can't do anything. You will just, you will not even go home, because you can't find your own house, right? And these people, they find their house, they find their wife, right? They know their children, and they say, I didn't know in the morning. So women are also, taken away by that. He didn't know that he was beating me. But he knew how to come to the house without going anywhere else. And if you meet a policeman on the way, he knows how to salute also. He recognizes the policeman from other men. So it is always, they know how to find the weaker people. As gender norms goes, women are said to be the weaker sex. So that is the, yeah.
This acceptance of the behavior.
It's okay.
Is it? Okay, yeah. How is it historically? How long has it been like this? This is quite extreme. I think we recognize the way of thinking. You can excuse somebody who has been drunk for many things. We have the past in Sweden. We have periods that has been more like that if you compare to this time that. Now we are starting to, I think, not accept that kind of behavior. But how is the history of? Has it been like this for many years?
I think so.
Always, or
because it's part of socialization. Proper interventions have not gone into that social learning process. That is where our interventions are leading. You have to recognize different points where you can break these things. Otherwise, it's it's going from generation to generation. Of course, it's not as bad as in the last 2-3 decades. Things are moving forward. Women are getting more education. Children are more empowered. But still, more efforts are needed.
I'm also a little bit interested in if the men, do they lose their jobs? Is the consequences that they lose their jobs, and are they then still accepted?
They do lose their jobs, depending on the type of job they are doing. Mostly, a high percentage of the category of men I am talking, they are either daily income earners, or in a very low income category earners. So they do lose their jobs, and again it have an impact on the family economic situation, and they can afford to lose their job, because that's, it's a kind of a self-handicapping thing I was talking about. They can afford. If I don't feel like going to work today, I can stay home, or I can just, hang around. Nobody would kind of, point a finger. Of course, they will not be valued or kind of, given recognition within the society. But still, nobody would care. They can afford to lose, but women can't afford. That is the major reason.
We have another 5 minutes to go before the lunch break, so maybe we should open for some more questions. But again, you can also ask questions to Samitha later today.
You spoke about the situation in Sri Lanka in alcohol, in economy and political will. I just wonder, as Sri Lanka is a spiritual country in a way, so what is the role of spiritual leaders, and the religions play a role in these cases? And my second question is to you, when you say about the presence of the noblesse, donc the overclass woman in the parliament, because if you have a parents who work as a political active, that means it's an overclass level. So my question is that, can we say that Sri Lanka is under the gender apartheid, which means that the status of a woman is legally valued as half and a man in the constitution of the parliament?
Answering the first question, that was regarding, sorry, can
Spiritual leaders.
Yes. Of course, they play their role. That, since the Buddhists are the majority, and from a Buddhist point of view, I'm more comfortable talking since I'm also a Buddhist. They do play their role, and preach people not to, to abstain from these things, because it's a sin from the religious point of view. But it doesn't, it is not read by all category of men, or people. There are, a category who are very religious. That is the people who are in their latter stages, maybe, after 60, 55, 60. They are very religious, and they would, they will read these things, or they will kind of, try to practice just to kind of, obtain merit for the next life, for their own benefit again, for their own religious kind of benefit. Because if you gain merit only, you will have a good birth in the next life. So for that purpose, they would kind of, abstain in the latter stages of their lives. But with the young generation, there is a percentage who kind of, very religious and abstain from all this. But the category I'm describing here, they would not read those lines, and it is not kind of, part of their life. So it plays a little role in this category, and maybe it plays a kind of a little more high role when they are in the latter part of their life. And second question, in the constitution, the proper place, recognition, all is there. Only thing, we are not preparing women. The educational system, the curriculums, those things are not preparing women. The grassroots leadership building, those are not supporting women to reach to that level, to kind of, have a balance. That is the major gap that we need to address. So the legal system and all other policies, they do recognize, they try to give the equal treatment, but to kind of, there is a gap to reach that. So that there is a lot of effort needed. And of course, we are taking those efforts.
Yes, one last question. Well, if not, you can, yes. Hold on, please.
I know too little about Sri Lanka, but I have two questions. Is Sri Lanka, Western meaning, is that democracy? And two, do you have any protection for women and children? We'll talk about children after, but do we have any sort of protection in the law against alcohol, violence, and men who beat them?
Yeah. Answering the first question, conceptually, yes, it's a democratic country, and there are so many gaps that we need to, kind of reach that democratic level. And I would stop there. And second question, of course there are. I mean, I have been kind of, emphasizing where the prevention part is needed. But there are laws, policies, kind of, established to protect. But it has their own gaps. The Domestic Violence Act, which is kind of, become activated in 2005. I mean, women activists had to, kind of give lot of effort just to get it passed in the parliament. So it's a kind of a gain for women, the Domestic Violence Act. But it's a kind of a very there are even implementation gaps are also there. But now, for example, when it comes to marital rape, still there is no direct law that can be addressed unless it is taken under the criminal law. So you need to have different kind of evidence to prove it under the criminal law. Otherwise, of course, women would not ever kind of, think that it is rape, because men are allowed to have their own sexual kind of, pleasure or whatever. Within marriage, it is allowed, whether it is forced or done kind of with negotiations. Those gaps are there, but this Domestic Violence Act is basically to kind of, protect women temporarily from, it kind of, how to put it, it gives the man a time period, not allowing him to reach the family. It's a kind of again, it's a not kind of a law that would bind men and kind of stop domestic violence, but it helps because it is accepted by the community. You are not taking your man to the courts, you are just asking him to stay away, so that is okay. If I am to take my man to the courts or file a case against him, then I am not doing that. He can kill me, but I am not doing that, because he is the only kind of, support whatsoever. So I can't do that. So that is the kind of situation.
Okay. Yes.
Has Sri Lanka ratified the core ILO conventions? And my thinking is regarding the right to organize, because there exists countries globally that says that they are a democracy, but they have not ratified this core convention, and therefore they are using their population as a workforce to pay for the social development. So
we have ratified.
You have,
yes, and the freedom is there. Only thing, when somebody wants to kind of stop it, there are kind of emergency law that can be put to stop all that. And we had the emergency law going on until last month.
Well, Samitha, I think you have in a excellent way shown the scope of how alcohol actually affects development for women. And this should actually challenge every organization, every rights-based organization who want to work with rights, and especially with gender rights and gender equality, that you can say a very useful way to enter the change that is necessary to reach gender equality is actually to address alcohol as well as many other issues. And this is in some way neglected or ignored today, probably because of some bias of some kind, or simple lack of consciousness, awareness of the effect, the impact of alcohol in so many ways, whether it's the individual relation or, as you showed here, so it became very apparent the political inhibition or the impediment of alcohol in women's opportunities to participate in the development. You will come back after lunch with more on children, and later also we'll have an opportunity to discuss this. So thank you very much, Samitha, so far.